Hello and welcome to another edition of Ben Wilkoff Debriefs the Transition. Today I wanted to go about this in a little bit different fashion because we have been trying to figure out all of the different ways that we can collaborate, and this is the first week where I felt like we sort of pulled it all together, but now we are in many different places. And I wanted to talk about maybe a way that we could sort of streamline and think through the process of continuing these conversations that have bubbled up and have started to create a lot of momentum around certain topics. And so I wanted to reference the fact that we spend a huge amount of time in our email, and that's where a lot of the communication happens. So we have talked about a couple of different ways of sort of managing the conversation, but a lot of the conversations get started in email, and it's not necessarily a great space for continuing conversation because things drop down to the bottom. You see, I'm at 65, which is, a lot of heartburn right now for me of messages that I need to do something with, going all the way back to last week. And so definitely making sure that I am on top of things is one of the parts that, causes some stress. And so how do we deal with that? Well, one of the ways that we deal with that is by using our lovely Hangouts. And I'm actually using a program called Yak Yak, which is a Google Hangouts application for Mac that lets me have in a much more pleasant way up notifications and all that kind of thing. But what's great about this is this represents our stream. This is, that quick communication. It doesn't get buried in email. We can send ridiculous Bitmojis that are maybe a little bit off kilter and things like that, right? That's our stream. One of the things that we started talking about at the retreat was having a space like a collaborative website or maybe multiple collaborative websites to sort of codify our thinking. Right? So we have this email communication system that we end up spending a lot of time in, but it's not necessarily great for having long or ongoing discussion. We have the stream that is very much like, this is what's happening right now. These are the celebrations that we can have. And then we have this space of sort of codifying, this is the work. I'm documenting it, I'm putting it on the website, and to a certain extent the EdTech website is that thing, or has been that thing in the past as well, right? So there are those spaces for, official communication in email, transient, but maybe more purposeful and instantaneous communication in Hangouts, and then the overall world-facing communication of a Google site. I think there is room, and Stella has set us up really well to create that space for long-term discussions and how we go about actually doing the codification of work and sort of things that we believe as a group. And so the way in which I'm thinking about this, and I'd love feedback and thinking from yourself, is to use a Google group. Now, Google groups have a lot of power in that they are email-based, but there are different types of Google groups that can be leveraged for lots of different things. So Stella set us up with PLP at aurorak12.org. This is both an email group that you can email into as well as an online space. And so you'll see this URL, and I'll put it in the description to the video and all that kind of good stuff. But essentially, I have loaded all of the updates that I have ever sent, as well as a couple of the ongoing conversations. And we can take a look at the monitoring of student devices conversation right here, which has all of the messages from Nick, from Stella, from Jackie, and it lets us not only make these searchable, but these are also things that we can reply to. So I can actually post a reply on the web to a particular point that was made. We can have threads, or I can reply to it from my inbox. So if I see this message, monitoring student devices, if I go back over to my email and just pull up the thread there, I can, if I go back over here to Nick's original message, if I reply to that message, and rather than including everyone on here as individuals, if I simply reply to PLP at Aurora K-12, then I can send that message to the group. It is archived there. All right, so let's talk about different ways in which we might be able to use this. So yes, I can start sending out my updates to PLP at Aurora K-12, but you can also start sending important information, meaning like, oh, you talked with a vendor that we might all want to know about, whether that's Apple or a case vendor, something like that. You can BCC the PLP group, and it will automatically be inserted into that group context. You can, if you're talking to a principal and you think that we all need to have that information, BCC PLP at Aurora K-12. So it's this context of figuring out, all right, how do I get out of my singular inbox that I only have access to into a group collaborative inbox? And once it's in here, one of the things that we can do is we can actually assign someone to try and solve for this particular issue. So let's say monitoring student devices. Rather than saying no action is needed for that, we can actually assign it to, let's say, Nick to figure out like an answer for. And so if I assign it to someone, or if you assign it to yourself, you can actually take that task and try and figure out what is our answer to this question, right? What is our solution to this problem? And whether or not we end up using that, I'm sort of not as concerned with, but the idea that we could actually have messages from all of our inboxes traveling into one space, and then we can solve for those problems rather than just sort of letting them languish at the bottom of our inboxes, feels really good. So I'm gonna take Nick off of this one and just change it to no action needed right now because we haven't set any of those policies or processes. All right, the one thing to make sure of is, let's say that you are feeling overwhelmed by email from this team and across the team, and you're like, I want it as a daily digest. You can actually change your membership and email settings so that you can say email delivery preference, notify me for every new message is what it's at right now. You can say send daily summaries, or don't send me anything until there are 25 messages, which probably is not the way to go. I recommend either daily summaries or notify me when every new message comes. Or if you would rather just view this as an online archive of all of our communications and collaboration, you can just say don't send me email updates. And then it is just a web forum. It is not an email service. So anyway, I just wanted to give that as like an option. That for me is something that I would like to start tackling. And I'm going to start seeing what happens when I BCC PLP at aurorak12.org. You might start getting more messages. You might try and figure out, do I need this as a daily digest, or do I need to set this as a bookmark? But I'd love your thoughts on how we might tackle this sort of in-between space between our craziness of our inbox and sort of our official word when we put it on the website and things like that. So anyway, I hope you have a great day of teaching, learning, leading, and creating.